okay? Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It's nice to see you all here. I hope you are having a wonderful morning. As always, could you please let me know in the chat if there are any problems with the stream, because I rely on you to tell me. So we made it halfway through the week. We made it to Hump Day. Happy birthday to one of my favourite friends in the whole world, Michael Lydiard, Invictus Games champion and all-round good guy. Happy birthday, Michael. Welcome back to my channel, everybody. If it's your first time visiting, well, hello there. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate you spending your valuable time at my little channel. How is your Wednesday going? Good, I hope. And if it's not, I am so sorry. So let's hang out and spend some quality time together. And we are very fortunate today to have my very good friend Stuart back. And in case anyone's wondering why I have an L plate hanging in the background, that's because I am a learner streamer and it's not coming off until I reach 500 subs. And I appreciate all my new subscribers. Thank you very much, taking me much closer to my goal. So hello, everyone. Hi, JP was first. That's like unusual for him. Daz, g'day, Jody, Gold Star Mother from the US. Hi, Nolly. Nice to see you over here. G'day, Daz. Hi, Rob. Stoddy, always nice to see you. Keely's here. The Ladies Auxiliary is here to keep you all honest. G'day, Ed B from the US. Hi, Drunk Aussie. Okay, today we have our very special guest joining us yet again, retired Australian Army Major Stuart McCarthy. Stuart served in the Australian Army for 28 years, including 6 operational deployments. His service included deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq, peacekeeping in Africa and Papua New Guinea, and disaster relief operations in the Asia Pacific. He was one of the almost 3,000 subjects involved in the Army's notorious tafenoquine and mefloquine anti-malarial drug trials in Bougainville and East Timor at the turn of this century. And since 2015, while still serving in the Army, Stuart has publicly campaigned for a royal commission to examine institutionalised medical abuse against Australian Defence Force personnel, and he has testified to numerous parliamentary inquiries, and he's authored many papers on the toxic effects of quinoline antimalarials. He was medically discharged from the Army in 2017 while undergoing rehabilitation for an acquired brain injury. So he has helped to design rehabilitation and outreach programs for some of Australia's most seriously ill and disabled veterans and their families. And he is a great supporter of people with disabilities in general. So I would like to add to that list that he is a great friend of this channel. Welcome back, Stuart.
Good morning, Loren. Good to be talking to you again. Good morning to your followers, and happy birthday to Michael Lydiard, fellow sapper.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Yeah, ginger beers all round.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last week, we covered quite a bit of ground about the push for the Royal Commission and the process so far, and also the strange task force that's been created. I would like to suggest to folks that if they didn't see that one, that they should go to my back catalogue and check that one out. But while you're here in the live, you may as well stay here. So I was wondering if you could just tell us a bit more maybe about your submission.
Yeah, so like I was saying last week, I was involved. Well, I wrote my own submission, and I was involved in the one which was written by Julianne Finney's Terms of Reference Advisory Group. So I might just describe mine first, and then if we get a chance, we can talk about the other one.
Sure.
So the one that I drafted, I put together during last year's Senate inquiry into the proposed legislation for the National Commissioner, and that was in October last year. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to be critical of that proposed legislation, well, I might just take the opportunity to say, okay, we need a Royal Commission, and here is some detail as to what it should look at. Now, the thing with the Royal Commission, if last week we spoke a lot about the consultation process and the various submissions that people were putting together.
Yeah.
A lot of those submissions and even the proposed terms of reference from the Prime Minister, a month or so ago,
Mm-hmm.
They kind of rattle off a list of themes. The Royal Commission needs to look at this, and this, and that's okay. There's been some good ideas have been put forward by a number of people, but to have a Royal Commission, the most important thing is you've actually got to frame what the problem is.
Yes.
And then you have to, rather than just listing off a list of themes, actually have to say, well, these are the areas that the Royal Commission needs to look into, because these are the areas which go back to how you frame that problem. And then you've got to look at how the Royal Commission would be structured, who the Royal Commissioners would be, what their functions will be, etc. So that's what I set out to do with that proposed terms of reference I wrote last year. And again, as we were talking about last week, what I personally believe is one of the most important aspects of this Royal Commission is that it needs to look at high-level misconduct.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
And that's one, it's so complicated. I understand that it's important for them to set the terms of reference and things like that, but this is where they kind of lose people, and people think, oh, this is just another thing. It's not going to make any difference.
No. So my start point, again, when we chatted last week, we were talking about some of the previous Royal Commissions and the work they've done. So the way that I framed mine, I didn't even use the S word in my submission or TOR, and it was the heading I gave was what's the effect of the support for veterans and families, and then neglect, abuse, etc., etc. And I've sent you a link to that, so hopefully you can post that. So that was how I kind of framed the problem. And then I said, okay, how am I going to frame an actual set of terms of reference? So my start point as far as the structure of my proposed terms of reference, given that I was highlighting misconduct, I went back and I looked at the Banking Royal Commission one.
Right.
So that terms of reference was all about misconduct in the finance sector. So that was the overall framework that I used. And then I looked at, the Disabilities Royal Commission and the Aged Care Royal Commission, because in those ones, they focused on neglect and abuse.
Yeah, right.
And so, in my opinion, again, those are some of the key issues as to how we actually frame what this Royal Commission needs to look into. So rather than just saying, okay, well, we need to, everyone, like I was saying, everyone knows that the Department of Veterans Affairs is dysfunctional.
Yes.
But we need to dig into why. Why is
exactly
that the case, right?
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, the way that this Royal Commission would need to be framed is to target neglect and abuse, right?
Yeah.
So that overall, that's how I framed it. I came up with a very long list of about a page and a half of definitions of misconduct. Included things like scapegoating. And the Burrett inquiry is an example of what the extent of the scapegoating that goes on. Throw the diggers under the bus. Keep the generals in the clear, and that sort of thing is just endemic. In the Defence Force, as a lot of your followers will
yes,
know.
Exactly.
So I spoke a lot about the misconduct and how that would be defined. And then as far as I guess broad themes, I came up with about a dozen of those, and was pretty specific about the types of neglect and abuse that would need to be looked into.
Yeah, because I imagine you'd have to be quite specific.
Human research, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I imagine you'd have to be quite specific. And this was something I've been talking to a few veterans about our conversation. And this was something that came up is we really need to probably identify exactly what's going wrong and, where it's going wrong. And I guess in all fairness, some of that does lay with veterans and veteran families in the aspect of, are they actually utilising the services that are already available and that might work if they maybe were more accessible? So it's
that's a really good point. And one of the points that I included in that proposed terms of reference was to look at the whole sector. So look at all of the different services, all of the different ex-service organisations, because
I agree.
Yeah, there's a whole pile of negative stuff, which we do need to highlight, because in order to get support for Royal Commission, some bad, you need to highlight the fact some bad things.
Well, if it wasn't bad, we wouldn't be here.
Really positive things are happening.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of good ESOs, a lot of good other support services are there. But what we need to do is identify what are the barriers, what are the things that are preventing veterans and their families from accessing those services. And it might be funding. It might be, one of the other little areas I'm passionate about, for example, is veterans who live in rural and regional areas. Okay, because there's a whole lot of barriers that go along with that too.
Heaps.
And another little one, which I've experienced myself because I've needed to access specialist care, is something as simple as, are our specialists, particularly allied health professionals, getting paid properly? So I discovered that, so for example, I was seeing an occupational therapist, speech therapist, physiotherapist, things like that. And I discovered that the people I was seeing, they were getting paid around about half their normal pay that they would get from any other private client or private patient, because the fee schedules that are used by Veterans Affairs are just so archaic.
I've heard of this as a problem.
What that means is that we're basically charity cases.
I've heard about this. I've heard there's folks who have trouble even getting to a specialist because they just don't take veteran clients because they're not getting paid the right amount.
Exactly. And they don't get paid properly, and then they've got to go through all of the bureaucratic nonsense. I even spoke to some of mine, and they'd have to, in some cases, go through months of additional paperwork just to get a simple bill paid.
And see, that is a problem. And I think a lot of times as civilians, we do just presume, we hear that there's all these things out there for veterans, but I think they don't understand it's not that easily accessible. And when someone is disabled and already having problems, what might seem like a little barrier to someone who doesn't have issues can mean the difference between life and death.
Absolutely. And this is, again, something we touched on a bit last week, is that, again, there are a lot of really good services there. But if you have a cognitive disability, right? So if you have problems communicating, problems, concentrating, if you're fatigued, you might get in contact with an organisation which really wants to do the right thing. And for a lot of veterans, they're really, really helpful. But because the people at the coalface of those organisations don't have that understanding and experience of dealing with people with disabilities, there's all these little barriers that they won't even understand, right? And and that was an area, or that's an area that the Disability Royal Commission is focusing on. They had a whole line of inquiry specifically into people with cognitive disabilities.
See, because that's a really good point, because also often, like, you'll get a veteran who's like, maybe their life's fallen apart, they've gone into crisis, they've identified they've got an issue, and then they'll go into like the RSL to get an advocate, but that's often that advocate themselves is disabled.
Yeah, exactly. And here's another part of my big learning curve over the last few years, or last maybe 6 years, right?
Yeah.
And I think you'll relate to this. So there are a lot of veterans who have cognitive disabilities. They might have
Yep.
brain injuries,
Yep.
or they might have, neurological disorders or whatever.
Yeah.
When they ask for help from someone else in the veteran space, and it might be a GP,
Yep.
it might be a psychologist, or it might be an advocate, right? The symptoms that they have are very, very typically, people perceive that they've got PTSD or a
Yes.
mental health disorder.
Yep.
So they kind of put them in that box.
Yeah.
And what that means is that unwittingly they're being sort of steered down this path of mental health care, whereas the support and the services they actually need are from another area.
Exactly.
So unwittingly they're actually being denied access,
and that
to
may
the actual
even
specialist care.
maybe even more than denying them access, they may even be given treatments, with the best
Yes.
intentions, that may even harm them more.
Exactly.
in some cases.
Exactly. That's right.
Now, look, I've just got a really good comment here in the chat from Michael Stott, who was a medic and he's now at
Yep.
uni. He's doing really great, and he has PTSD, but he's really getting on top of it and managing it really well. And he said, I read the supplementary submission and I was very interested in the issue of moral injury, as I've seen quite a lot of evidence to prove this is a major problem. So have I, with a lot of friends who were in Rwanda and places like that. And this comes back to what we were talking about before, where there's somebody in the senior levels has to be responsible at some point for giving an order that has Australian soldiers witnessing massacres and not able to do anything.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100% agree. Going right back to 2015, when I first testified to a Senate inquiry, that's when some of the first research and the thinking about moral injury was being published, and that made a lot of sense to me right from the start. Right?
Yeah.
And I think most people who've had a military background will be able to relate to it. Now, the really positive thing is, even since then, like even in that last sort of 5 or 6 years, a lot of that research has come along in leaps and bounds. There's a bit of a way to go. But for example, in Julianne Finney's group, in our expert group that briefed Polly's in Canberra a few weeks ago, we had two people, or one lady in particular, Nikki Jamison, who's one of the mothers. She's actually completed her PhD in that field, and she's had a whole bunch of papers published, and she does lectures and seminars on moral injury. So that question is right at the forefront. But here's another little aspect of this, right, that some of your followers, even the medics and so on, might be interested in. This is one of my concerns. So the understanding and the acknowledgement of moral injury, I think, is a really, really positive thing. One of the things that, in my opinion, that we need to guard against, though, is that moral injury becomes this sort of medicalized version of PTSD.
Yep.
And so we might have this same scenario, right? So where people get steered down the path of medical intervention, where that's actually not what they need.
Yep.
And to, I guess, come right back full circle back into this Royal Commission. This is, again, why, in my opinion, we've got to have individual, personal, high-level accountability for these decisions.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
That's the stuff that really hurts. That's the stuff that eats away at people, for years and years and years. They can get all the medical care in the world for PTSD or whatever other mental health disorder you like. If you were wronged, if you were seriously wronged in a way that completely betrays your whole sense of purpose and being and integrity, that's not something you can fix with a medical intervention.
No, exactly. Exactly. And I think that's got to be a factor in the S word in our community. I think it has to be.
And in the academic community now, there's no dispute about that. That's right at the forefront and has been for a number of years. And the positive thing is within the Julianne Finney's expert group, we had exactly the right people to drive that message home to the people that we were briefing, and that's the sort of stuff that's definitely included in that group submission.
Yeah. Did they listen?
They did, but again, the positive thing with moral injury is that we can talk to politicians about this stuff, and there's not going to be pushback against looking at moral injury in this Royal Commission. But the positive thing is across the academic community, there's already an understanding that this is an absolutely crucial issue that needs to be looked at. So there wouldn't be, even from what I know now, look, there's still no guarantee what the actual terms of reference are going to look like, but I would be absolutely surprised if that's not one of the really important issues that does come out of this Royal Commission.
Yeah, exactly. That would actually be quite outrageous, I think, if it's not included. I have a question for you, and I wonder if you could answer it. Where do the anti-malarial drug trials fit into the Royal Commission?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, in fact, I was going to touch on that. So,
because talking about brain injuries and that, this is sort of relevant to that.
Absolutely. This is the thing, right? So these things are all tied in together. They're all linked in together into one big picture.
Mm-hmm.
So in my the submission I just outlined before, I didn't mention specific drug names or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I included a line in there which said that the Royal Commission would need to examine human research in the Defence Force, and right from the ethics, the conduct of clinical trials, the care of clinical trial subjects, during clinical trials and since then. So the whole spectrum. So the anti-malarial trials, which I was involved in and a lot of your other fellows were involved in, absolutely that they, if I get my way, that would be in the scope of the Royal Commission. That will be one of the key issues. But not only those trials, it will be everything done under the banner of human research.
Yes, and I think that's important.
One little segue. You might have seen there's a couple of stories in the Daily Telegraph. There's one on Monday and one yesterday into a report written by Dr. Sam Cromford, she was actually received, millions of dollars of contracts from the Defence Force, and she was the one who looked into the culture in the SAS, and that's what eventually led to the Brereton inquiry. Now, one thing that was that the Daily Telegraph discovered and they reported was that research was done under the banner of human research.
Oh, really?
Yes,
that's very interesting.
Here's the catch, right? Here's the catch. She didn't receive the right ethics approval.
No, because
for those studies.
Well,
that's done, quote, retrospectively.
Funny, how can that happen?
So there's another example.
Funny you should say that.
Of human research being done.
Yeah, we have actually had a conversation about what we think of the ethics of how that was done, and we came up with the conclusion that it was highly unethical.
Absolutely, and how can you have someone who is a sociologist who receives multi-million-dollar contracts for social research, ending up in leaked segments of her report, and being used as a basis to make allegations of war crimes.
That's what we wanted to know.
Is absolutely fundamentally unethical.
It's very important that we get these what did you call them? Human studies?
Human research.
Human research.
So
it's really important.
Human research is one of the things that
it's really important that gets included. Is there anything my subs can do to make sure that there's pressure applied to get that included?
Yeah. So as I said last week, the door isn't closed. I mean, yes, the formal consultation process is over, but this is really important. Until the Prime Minister makes his announcement, the people you should keep going to are your federal MPs and senators.
Right. Okay.
So pick your top 2 or 3 issues, and in my opinion, human research is definitely one of those.
I think so. A lot of people were very upset.
So we need this included in the Royal Commission.
Yep, exactly. A lot of folk were very upset about that. And, even if you just forget about the anti-malarial trials, which a couple of people in my chat are saying, the Australian Malaria Institute was in a world of its own, and I'd have to agree with you there. But even for in case of that with the Brereton report, that's not common knowledge. I didn't know that.
No, well, I've known about it for a while, but it hasn't been in the media. And unfortunately, the Daily Telegraph picked up on the story, and it was front page on Monday. And it was, I was watching Senate estimates yesterday and the day before, and the Chief of the Defence Force and Chief of Army copped an absolute grilling over the contracts.
There you go, folks.
Done,
that might be worth a rewatch. I know it's not very exciting to watch that, but you might enjoy that one. But I actually really would like it if you could come back and visit us again and actually talk about the actual what happened with the anti-malarial drug trials one day, if that would be okay.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a while.
Yeah, so exactly.
Need to have a whole show.
Exactly. But on this subject, I was wondering, so the consultation for the terms of reference is finished. What happens from here, and how does the Attorney General sort of fit into all of this? Because this is very confusing to me.
So, in fact, I had a funny, I contacted one of my MPs the other day. In fact, no, it was like one of my senators. This is a bit how important it is to contact your MPs and your senators. So one of my senators up here in Queensland, she's actually the Assistant Attorney General.
Right.
So she was one of the people I contacted a couple of weeks ago. I actually sent her my submissions, and then followed it. You always got to follow these things up. You got to ring up the staff. So I rang up her electorate office up here. And it turns out the guy who answered the phone is actually ex-ADF officer.
Okay.
And which is good. And he said to me, I was saying, look, is there a way that I can talk to Senator Stoker about this terms of reference? Because maybe there's a possibility she might be involved in the process because she's the Assistant Attorney General. Yeah. And then he gave me this long explanation. So, this is how it works, mate. And think of the Attorney General as like the orderly room. They do the paperwork and so on. And and I thought maybe that's actually not a bad analogy, right? Yeah. So the Attorney General, what they will do is they've got all these submissions. They'll sit down and they'll do all of the legwork for actually drafting a terms of reference. The actual decision as to the terms of reference, the appointment of commissioners, writing the letters patent that will go to the Governor-General. There's one person in the country who does that, and that's the Prime Minister.
Okay.
So the Attorney-General does and their staff do all the legwork, but ultimately it's the Prime Minister who makes that decision and sends that to the Governor-General. So we don't know for certain now when that will actually be. I think it might be at least another 2 to 3 weeks. I might be wrong. So I would say it might be another 2 to 3 weeks, but who knows? It could be a lot longer. Someone who's pretty close to this stuff and follows this stuff, politically a lot more closely than me said, they might even want to push it out to about September, which I was horrified me.
Yeah, exactly.
Who knows? Unfortunately, we won't know until there's an actual announcement.
So we're kind of at their whim at the moment.
We are. But we're not. This is the mindset, right? This is the mindset we've got to be in. We've politicians are elected by us, and they work for us. So you have your say. Go and talk. I'll keep saying this until I'm blue in the face. Go and talk to your MPs because they work for you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's their job. That's why they get paid.
Yeah, exactly. So if you never, I know what it's like. It's very hard to get motivated to do this, and it can feel like a futile exercise. But if we all do it, and we all do it at once, it could make a very, very big impact.
Well, look at how far we've come.
Yeah.
Look at the difference we've already made. So this is a little habit. Like I'm like you. It is very frustrating.
Yeah.
And I get angry. I'm human. I'm the same as
Yeah.
as the next person. But one little habit that's worth getting into: look at how far we've come.
Yeah.
And we've only been able to achieve this Royal Commission through teamwork.
That's
so the
true.
more people who do, and this is snowballed, right? This is it's taken a few years, but it's snowballed. Why? Because people have been hammering their elected representatives. That's the only way this could have happened.
And I think even if it doesn't
next
affect
little
you,
bit of effort, have your say, and pay dividends.
Exactly. And even if it doesn't affect you, I think it's a good idea. So, I mean, I have a lot of civilians watching my stream also, and I would even encourage them to write to their MPs and say those things, that even if you have to rewatch this stream and jot down the points that we think are important to mention, I think perhaps mention them. And because that would be, I'm sure a lot of civilians are presuming that our veterans have ease of access to these things. I'm pretty sure most civilians are not well versed in moral injury at all in any way, shape or form.
No, they're not. And again, we had, when we chatted last week, whenever you're trying to push for something out of the government, the first thing you've got to try to understand is what is their current position, right? So when we chatted last week, I was saying how when I watched the Prime Minister's announcement just over a month ago, he included that little one-liner about the Royal Commission not being empowered to look at civil or criminal wrongdoing. So I thought, right, we got to attack that.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you've got civilian followers there, my ask of them would be, and to include, if you are going to talk to your MPs, make that the point. That you can highlight. Ask that this Royal Commission specifically looks at high-level civil and criminal wrongdoing.
Yeah, because I actually think that's where a huge part of the problem is. I mean, that's just my lay opinion.
Yeah, because that ties into the whole moral injury thing. Yeah, that's right at the very core of this whole issue.
Yeah, exactly. And like Michael Stott, Medic, has just said, if we do it respectfully and do it often with our MPs, then we can stay in the polly's ears and on their radar. Exactly, Michael Stott. This is why you, Stuart, still get invited to Canberra.
Well, I'm not the most popular person in Canberra.
You sail close to the wind.
The way that I got involved in Canberra was through teamwork.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wasn't being listened to for a long time.
Yeah.
But someone asked me to join her team.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
Yeah.
It's all about teamwork and exactly what Mike was saying.
Exactly.
Be polite, but be persistent.
Yeah.
Politicians have so many people contacting them over all of their different pet issues.
Yeah.
You've got to make some noise. You've got to be polite, but be persistent. Just make a habit of even ring them once a week or something like
exactly.
that.
And, there has been, like, in the veteran community, we are sometimes our worst enemies, and there is critics of it, but they're a very small voice, and their actual arguments against it are a little bit silly, I've found. Like, there was a silly blanket statement of, people who want a Royal Commission are just people who hate the government. Well, that actually couldn't be further from the truth with me. I'm always trying very, very hard to give, to the bane of some folk, to give the government a fair go and trusting them. And I think the truth is that no, this is gone too far. And the very fact that the government seems to have dug its heels in and had to be dragged to this kicking and screaming and still wants to protect, like, generals and things like that, I think that should actually highlight that they're trying to sweep something under the carpet. They're trying to hide something. That's what I think.
Yeah, well, again, we touched on this, last week, right? So the biggest problem and the biggest liability that the government has is that they rely on advice. They rely on the advice of these generals, and they rely on the advice of the senior officials in Veterans Affairs. So there's no way they can get their heads around this. And one of the main reasons, in my opinion, that the government has, as you say, you had to be dragged into this, is because they're getting crap advice from the Generals Club, right?
Yeah.
So, and the only way to cut through that is for for us out here in the real world to go to MPs and just keep driving that stuff home.
Yeah, and we'll educate them. We'll make sure
exactly.
that they get the right advice. So, is there anything else before we go? Because we'll do a shorter one today, but it would be great if we could have you back again.
Yeah, well, if I'm very keen to, if you've got more, people want to ask questions, I'm happy to stick around for a bit. Or we can come back
for sure.
Well,
here's a question: how do we get Kaz listened to? Could you invite Kaz to a meeting sometime, because he can talk firsthand about moral injury, and in a really quite passionate but quite, with leaving emotions out of it, and how it's affected his life. And I really want to be getting actual soldiers who have lived through it actually listened to. How do we get someone in Canberra to listen to him?
Let me just think out loud a bit. So one of the positive things about this Royal Commission, even though the consultation process has been closed or whatever, is that the media wants to hear this stuff now.
Right.
And so I'd be very happy to chat to Kaz and start throwing his contact details out there when we get media inquiries.
Yeah, I think so. I think
so that's definitely
we should, because
one thing we can do. As far as formal meetings go, I think that when it comes to meetings that are actually going to have a direct influence on the terms of reference, I think that window's sort of closing.
Right.
Definitely have a chat to Kaz, and if there are opportunities that come up, I'm more than happy to have them included.
And that's why you're our favourite officer, because you actually do care about the folks who a lot of other officers wouldn't give the time of day to.
The thing with Kaz, I remember back in 2015, unless I got my wires crossed, so I was still serving. And I was, the early stages of going through my medical discharge process. I remember seeing some of Kaz's social media stuff, and I may have even been his YouTube channel.
Yep.
But the push-up challenge and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Kaz has been around this for a long time.
He has.
And I was seeing that stuff even 6 years ago.
Exactly, and he's a really great example, because he's someone who has reached out and done all the PTSD courses that have been offered, but they can't heal or cure or even for 1 minute take any of the weight off of his moral injury, which he won't mind me saying he struggles with.
Well, we all struggle.
Yeah.
I struggle with
exactly.
that.
Yeah, exactly. And truthfully, in his situation, somebody gave that order to make a young man stand there and have to witness a massacre. And now that somebody has never been questioned about it.
No, exactly.
And I think truthfully, civilians would actually be shocked if they knew how. And that's just one example out of thousands, And Michael Stott's saying it would be really nice if they took testimonials from like lower ranks and from a wide range of corps, not just Heston Russell VC winners and all that. Yeah, exactly. By the way.
Well, the good thing is too, as I was saying last week, when the Royal Commission ramps up, that's going to be the vehicle for all of these other voices to be heard. I'm very confident that that's going to happen. Okay, we can quibble about what the actual terms of reference might be.
Yep.
But usually, it's pretty much a certainty that every terms of reference for Royal Commission, it has a line towards the end, all other related matters. Okay, so there's huge scope, and the other thing is terms of reference can be amended through the whole process. So
okay, I didn't know that.
For a couple of years.
Right, I didn't know that. I thought once they were set, that was it, and it couldn't be. So if something came up during the commission, then they could alter the course. Is that correct?
They can.
Right.
And the good thing, the positive thing about a Royal Commission is the horsepower that they have with all their staff. So don't think of it as just one or four or whatever commissioners.
Yeah.
They have great staff with all the right expertise and the right qualifications.
Yeah.
So at least for the first 2 to 3 months of when the sort of official start date, so when the Prime Minister's announcement will be, the first pile of work that they do is they sit down and they actually figure out for themselves, what are we going to look at?
Right.
How are we going to sequence all of it? Who are we going to bring in to, tell us their stories, all that sort of stuff. And right from the start point, that's where people like Kaz and that's where these other people are going to have a chance, not just to have their individual say, but actually shape how the Royal Commission will go about doing it.
And talking about accessibility, like say if someone like John Paul wanted to have some input, which I think he would have valuable input, and but he also has some limited abilities, but I think he could offer a great deal of insight, being someone who was on drug trials, has had ECT, definitely. Has tried absolutely everything and has come close to the S word several times, so I think they are the folk that they need to be listening to, is the people who have been on that edge.
Well, the good thing, again, this goes back to the discussions that I've had with the Disability Royal Commission.
Yeah.
When I contacted them, there's a bit of a misperception in the veterans community, because we've gone through all these sort of half-baked Senate inquiries, that the only way to have your say is you've got to sit down and write some 20-page.
Yeah.
That is not the way that Royal Commissions work.
Because that's what I was visioning.
All you need to do, if you want to be involved in the Royal Commission, have your say, it's as simple as ring a phone number, send them a quick email. Even in some cases, they'll set up like a social media page, and you can just message them. From that point, they will put steps in place to make it easy for you to have your say. It might be, you can sit down with them and just talk, and they do a video recording. It might be, you just sit down and talk, and someone takes a transcript or even does that over the phone. There's another avenue where you can go and sit with one of the commissioners.
Yep, right.
In a face-to-face.
Yeah, exactly. Meeting. So that is going to provide accessibility.
And some of it, if you want to speak publicly, absolutely you can do that. But if you want to do it in private, have all the support around you to do it, there's that avenue as well. There's so many avenues.
That's great to hear, actually.
That that's one of the main reasons that I've been pushing for a commission rather than all these other kind of half-baked inquiries.
They're strange, aren't they? It's strange the process has taken this long to get here.
Yeah.
And I think it's and also at the end of a Royal Commission, though, there is no guarantee that the implemented changes will be implemented. Is that right?
No, that's true. That's true. And a lot of the critics of a Royal Commission, that's one of the first things I'll say.
It doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
Look at the impact that Royal Commissions have is not necessarily the situation where you need to wait for 2 years and findings and recommendations made. Look at the changes that happen through the process, and it's not necessarily just relying on governments. The best comment that I heard about this Royal Commission actually came from someone who might be under consideration to be one of the commissioners.
Okay.
And this person said to me, one of the most important things for this Royal Commission will be to bear witness. It's a truth-telling exercise.
Yeah.
And telling those truths in a way that can be shared publicly while still supporting and protecting the witnesses. What that does is it gets these issues out from under the carpet. So it's not just governments; it's the whole veterans community, it's the whole healthcare community, and all of the other institutions and organisations across the country that pay attention to this stuff, and it'll help them to help us. That's what this thing's all about. Much more than just recommendations to government.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, that is it. I have learnt a lot today. Actually, I had no idea that was considered an experiment. I had no idea that the veterans won't have to write a lengthy submission,
No,
because
no.
I know that's just out of reach for so
It
many of
is.
my
Yeah,
friends. It would be out of reach for me to do.
yeah.
And so
Well,
I'm
I struggle to do it. I
yeah.
sat down even last year
Mm,
for that Senate inquiry. I thought, oh, here we go again. I've got to sit down and bare my soul. And it is hard. And I'm someone I've got a university
yeah.
degree and I've written this stuff before. It's hard.
Yeah.
So the people we really need to hear from, it's just completely beyond their reach.
Yeah, and I really
Whereas a Royal Commission is fundamentally different to
yeah.
that whole process.
Exactly. And I really appreciate you explaining those things to us and I appreciate also you taking the time to do it. And I know that it's not easy for you to do, but without folks like you doing that, we wouldn't even be close to getting a voice. So I really appreciate everything you do.
For me too, because I have some influence. I do get invited to some of these meetings and so on. I learn new stuff every day. Right? I've learned some horrific things, and I've learned some really, really positive things.
Yeah.
So, if you've got people who follow you and want to have their say or ask questions, I will learn from that as well.
Yeah.
There's no one person who's the expert in all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's that first-hand lived experience of every veteran and every member of their families, which is absolutely crucial to this whole Royal Commission process.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, we want changes. We want everybody to have the best chance of finding other options other than finishing it all. And
exactly.
that is what we want. And so that is the goal. And there is a lot of things that obviously are compounding the issue and making it difficult for folks to carry on. So I think it's going to be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Definitely.
But it would be great if you could join us again. We should just have a regular Disco Stew
we should
segment.
Do a regular thing. There's so much to talk about. There's so many
Exactly. Yeah, and my followers love you. You've been crowned Disco Stew. That's your name. So
I am not a Simpsons episode.
Yeah. You can't push back on a nickname. You can't.
No,
It's going to stick.
Now.
But thank you so much, Stuart, for spending your very valuable time at our little corner of YouTube. Folks, if you have any questions, either drop them in the comments below when the stream has uploaded, or be here next time that Stuart joins us for another chinwag, and put them in the chat. And thank you to everyone who was in chat. Thank you to the Ladies Auxiliary, Keely and Jody, Gold Star Mother from the US. This is a very poignant subject for you, I know, Jody. Everybody, please leave a thumbs up below the screen. Subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to ding my little bell for notifications of all my future uploads. Please consider sharing this so we can grow this community into a bigger one. I can finally get off my L plates. Thank you so much for watching. Please say good day in the comments, or suggest a subject for a future video, or particularly questions that you might have for Stuart. So I hope you can join me tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Have a fantastic Wednesday, everyone. G'day, Andrew Thompson. Nice to see you here. Love and kisses. Bye, everybody. See you later. Okay, thanks.